from a family check, we now get into the Transformative Leaders segment. And joining me in studio at the moment is Deborah Kalei, who is a writer. And I have a book that she has written with me right here. It's right here, if you can see it on your screens. And the headline, or the topic, the title, headline in the headlines. The title of this book is Cry the Beloved Children. And she is here with us to talk about the art of writing. Welcome to Good Morning Kenya, Deborah.
Thank you, Vivian.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you, and thank you for having me today.
We are pleased to have you on the show today. If you can why did you write this book? We can just get straight into why you wrote this book.
It's actually probably an inspiration from my brother Kibwana Onguso, because the life we were leading was a difficult life. Yeah. And somehow he had put together some information of what was going on in our family. At the time I wasn't really interested, but the moment my dad passed away, I thought it's about time to tell the story of how our life was when we were growing up. Yes.
How did you come up with a topic, Cry the Beloved Children?
Actually struggled with the topic. At one time I was like, probably I should give it, you have no idea, but I thought, oh, probably people won't understand what this was all about. But the topic Cry the Beloved Children came about because I was like, we knew we were loved by my dad because my mom had left, but then that love was really never shown by him because of the influence he had from his wife. So that's why we were like, okay, we are beloved children, but all we did was cry while growing up. Yes.
If I may ask you, what are the tips to writing a good book?
First and foremost is to actually check what the other authors have put down together. And this one being a story of our lives, it's important to read biographies, because that gives you an idea of what people are talking about in their lives. And the tip I have for writing this book is that, you know, you go out there, talk to people, and read what people have written. And even just go on the websites and check out, you know, Google and check out, you know, what tips are out there for writing books.
What are the benefits of writing? This is your first book, right?
This is my first book, and I must say the fact that I wrote this book and completed it, to me it was kind of a healing process. So that's what has benefited me by writing this book. Yes.
It is a true story.
It is
It's a story of 5 siblings.
Yes, it is.
You know, you and your siblings.
Yes.
So it's an actual true story.
It is an actual true story.
Was it difficult for you writing down your own story?
Yes, very difficult. Yeah, it took longer than I thought. I mean, it took me 2 years, just about 2 years to write it down, but the process of writing that book was very emotional. It was really difficult, and sometimes I would start writing the book, and in the process of writing I would just stop and just cry before I would continue. Yeah.
What was the most difficult part, or what is the most difficult part about you writing this particular biography? It's actually a biography.
Yes, it is. The most difficult part was, you know, the fact that whatever happened to us ended up in the death of my dad, and the fact that all this time my dad thought he was there for us and we thought he was our protector, but he wasn't. But then due to everything that happened in his life and in our life, we lost him before we could even sit down and, you know, just resolve the issues that we were having. So that was the most difficult part for me. Yes.
It being a true story whereby you're not just talking about yourself, you're talking about experiences that you went through with your, including your sisters, your siblings as well.
Yes.
Did they approve of you writing the book?
They did.
Yeah.
They did, because like I said initially, when I got some of the information from Kibwana, I was like, okay, I hung on to it for a very long time. But after I'd gone back to Australia where I live, after burying my dad, I thought maybe it's about time that I actually write it down. But then again, I had the influence from my friend, because I used to spend a lot of time with one of my friends, Irene, and you know, I kept talking about my story all the time. And I talked to other ladies as well, and they were like, why don't you put it in a book? Why don't you write it? And I was like, oh, I'm not an author really, I can't really do anything about this, but they said, just give it a go. And being a Christian, this lady told me, just pray about it, and probably God will help you in downloading all the information that you need put in the book. So that's how it happened. Yeah.
For an aspiring writer who's watching us right now, if you may just take us through the process of writing this book. You said it took you 2 years to write it?
It took me 2 years.
Just take us through that process from inception.
First and foremost, like when I was starting, for example, and I'm talking from my own experience, is that I was just putting everything down, you know. I wrote everything, the points that I needed to actually address. I put them down, and then slowly I went chapter by chapter, you know, just writing what it was. And you know, when writing a book, you may find that everything is all over the place, you know, but the main thing is just to put your points down. Once you have your points down, then think about how will this story actually flow. And for me, I decided to, you know, put it in such a way that it started with, you know, like my parents, my siblings, my grandmother, who was also pivotal in this story that I have written. And then I decided, like I've talked about my brother Kibwana, he was the only son, and because my stepmother was fighting about the issue of inheritance, she was worried that if anything happens, he would be the sole beneficiary. She decided to fight him, and that's why his life was even harder. Our lives were hard, but for him, there were so many attempts on his life because he was going to be the heir. And that is something I decided I make it really, you know, a very big part of the story. Though I also wrote about myself, because even during our trauma with this lady, some of the trauma was the beating and the hitting and, you know, like being sent out to sleep outside, you know, like you've done something very minimal and you're sent to go and sleep wherever, but not in the home. You're chased away from the home. One of my younger sisters, who was, you know, at the time she was about 2 years old, the youngest at the time, because the other one had died many years before. Just the fact that she couldn't sleep in the afternoon, my stepmother was so angry with her, and he actually threw a knife towards her, and it hit her shoulder and it stabbed her. And then one of the other sisters, because she said, you know, out of an innocent child's mind, asked my stepmother, how come you've not gone, you know, like the children are made to believe that you go somewhere and bring back babies? And she questioned why she had never brought a baby. My stepmother didn't like her for that. And what she did, she actually burnt her with coals and sent her away. And she used to hit her head against the wall. So those are the incidences. Kibwana, for example, he had those incidences that he has talked about where my stepmother influenced my dad to beat him up for something he hadn't done. But as for me, she didn't physically beat me, but she actually traumatized me just by the words that she was saying to me. And those are the words that have affected me up to today. You know, as a grown-up, some of the things you're told all the time, you know, you amount to nothing, you are nothing, the best you can be in life is be a maid, you get children out of wedlock and all that. So, you know, like in your life, when some things don't go as they're supposed to go, you start thinking, you know, maybe I'm not supposed to be who I am, maybe, you know. Every time somebody questions you about something, you think, yeah, it's because of her, you know. She said this to me, so I can never succeed in life, because that's what she told us. She told us, or told me not to waste my time even going to school, because I'll never pass, I'll never succeed. So those are the things that, you know, I decided to put down. But then I thought, despite writing about my siblings, I also needed to say something about myself. And if I can just read a paragraph from page 4, it's on exactly what you're saying. And on page 4, there is somewhere where you've actually, it's in quotes, the words that were being said to you. You were told you are useless, you are stupid, you'll never amount to anything, you'll be maids. You'll never find school, you'll never finish school, you're failures, your children will be bastards. Don't waste time and money studying, because you will fail and you will become prostitutes like your mother. What do such words do to a small mind? I can imagine these words being said to young children. What exactly do they do to someone's young mind, and does it ever go away?
you know?
No.
Yeah.
These words, and sometimes, and as a parent, I always say, please be careful what you tell your children, because they actually live within your children. So be careful what you say, because when you say such words to a young mind, that's what they'll grow up thinking, that's what they are. That even when they do, for example, if they decide to become prostitutes, they'll just say, yeah, because I was told I'm going to be a prostitute. So, you know, and they also say, the Bible says, you know, there's power in the tongue. So whatever comes out of your tongue, please make sure it's something that's building somebody up and not tearing them down. That's why for children, please, parents, say the best. Say the best that you can say for your children, because that's how your children will grow up knowing that no matter what, I can do this. But this one affects children. Because even me at my age, it's still affecting me.
Yeah.
So you don't want that to be affecting your children. No. Yeah.
What are some of the topics that we can just mention that you've covered in the book?
Well, one of the other topics, because despite talking about our lives, you know, and I decided probably the best thing that I can think about in this topic is, and despite what we went through, I know God was there for us.
Yeah.
And I decided forgiveness. Forgiveness was a big thing. I know it's a struggle. It's been a struggle for me, you know, to forgive. But one thing I know, that forgiveness is actually taking off the load that I've been carrying all my life. And somebody says, yes, forgive. You don't have to forget, but forgive, because when you forgive, you're actually freeing yourself. So despite everything that happened, forgiveness is the main topic for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Forgiveness is the main topic, and that's what you would want people to, you know, get out of the book.
Yes.
You also touched on witchcraft.
Yes.
Can we get a bit into that?
Yes. I've talked about witchcraft because that's actually what happened to us. I've always said, and living in Australia, I remember telling people like a few times when I've talked about the book, I'm like, some people may not understand what witchcraft is about. But if we go back to the Bible, there is witchcraft. And this witchcraft actually really affected us. And I think there's a section in the book where I've mentioned, you know, my stepmother. Like one time during the holidays, I'll just give an example. We got home from school and she took off with her friend. We don't know where she went. Then when she came back with all these concoctions. And you know what she told us? You know, you take this. Do you know, an innocent child? They will take it. You know, they've been told by an adult, you take this.
Yeah.
You know, it was something, some ash mixed with some water, and then something that looked like an egg, a boiled egg. And she told us to eat it, and we were like, okay, why are we eating this? Or why are we drinking this? And you know what she told us? That this will help you to be clever in school. And we took it. We don't know what it did to us. But that was like the beginning of so many things that were happening. I've also mentioned like one time a cousin of ours was living with us, and you know, he had come from school, and at night before he went to bed, he just realized there were people who came to the house. My dad used to work shift work, and sometimes he would work at night. And my stepmother with these men slaughtered some chicken and spilled blood on my dad's pillow. I don't know what that meant. You know, like even for somebody who's like, what is this? You'd start questioning what that is. And then the other time we were traveling in a train, you know, those days when the Kenya Railways had those good coaches, and we were traveling and going to up country to Vihiga, and suddenly I was sleeping and woke up, and when I was trying to get out of bed because I was at the top deck, there was plenty of blood on the floor. And I was like, what's this? And then they told me, you go back to sleep, just forget about this. So those are the many things that were happening to us, but we didn't know what it was all about, which I believe up to now, those things have affected us in one way or another. Yes.
Was there no one to talk to about this? And
no.
Couldn't you talk to your biological mother about this? Because it's not like your mom wasn't there, like she was still alive.
She was still alive.
Yeah, she was living.
She was still alive. She had left. Now, the thing about my mom leaving, my stepmother, by the way, was a very close friend of my mom. And I think my mom lived a very good life. My dad loved her. And these are the stories we keep hearing, because after my dad passed away, my uncles and aunties started telling us, what kind of life we lived and how caring dad was. And at one time we looked at them and we were like, I don't know what you're talking about, because I've never really felt that love from my dad. And the thing is, when my stepmother came into the picture, because my mom kept telling her how loving her husband was and how caring he was, I think she became jealous. And that's another thing about witchcraft, because in our culture, and I don't know about the other cultures, there's a concoction you put in the fireplace or in the jiko, and then when it starts burning and the smoke comes out, it's like a way of sending you away. So my mom left. She left us. I was only 8 years old. She never came back. And when we asked to see my mom, we were told if anybody starts questioning about that, we'll be cursed. So we never asked. So my mom was not in the picture. Since my mom left when I was about 8, I saw her 14 years later when I was at university. So we couldn't go to anyone. There was no one we could go to. My dad, obviously, a few times we tried to tell him what was going on. My dad never believed anything we told him. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe what would you, what word or what would you say to parents who are living with children who are not biologically theirs? Just a word for them.
Love
maybe.
them. Yeah. Love those children like they were your own, because you never know what happens in the future. These are the children who might even get you out of very dire situations, because children are innocent. Please, parents, whether they're yours or not, love them, and care for them.
Yeah. And for the parent who's, because in your case, your dad was your biological dad and you were living with him, and then there was the stepmother.
Yes.
But your dad didn't see all these things that were being done to you.
No.
When you say one of your sisters was stabbed, you say your brother was, literally burned.
Yeah, my other sister. Yeah.
Yeah, your other sister was.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't your dad around? He's there.
He lived and worked away, so he only came once a month.
Yeah.
That's when he came back, because at the time when my mom left, we used to live in Nakuru, and then we moved and went to live on the farm. So my dad would come once a month, sometimes twice a month. So yeah, when all these things were happening, he wasn't there. And because of the fact that he didn't believe anything we told him, we chose not to tell him anything. Yeah.
So this also brings the matter of communication. Like for parents, they need to have a relationship with their children whereby I can feel, open to talk about my issues. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree, totally.
Yeah. There's somewhere also in the book where you said you had revealed these things to one of the, I think, bishops or pastors. Yeah, so that's how come we got some material to start the book, because my stepmother was a member of a church, which maybe many people would call cults here. And what happened was she was actually getting promoted. So my brother thought, how can they promote somebody who's been so, who has traumatized kids, and she's been so bad to these kids. So he decided to write a letter to the bishop to tell him what she had actually done, because that was a way of trying to get the bishop not to promote her, because she was preaching one thing and practicing something different. That's how that came up, but the bishop didn't take action on that. Yeah. Did that do something to you, your relationship with the church?
Not really, because we were not really going to that church. It's how we used to, though she forced us to go to that church when we were younger. But when we got older, we chose other paths.
There's also something else I saw that you touched on in the book, and that is the battle, after your dad passed on. And this is something that many families also get to go through after maybe a parent dies, the battle that ensues after, whereby you even need to go to court in terms of maybe securing an estate that the person had. And just, if you could just take me through that.
Well, as soon as my dad passed away, obviously, because we thought we are the biological children, we have the right to the estate, but that didn't happen. As soon as he passed on, my stepmother was on it, and she went to court to say that she needed to take over that property. So we've been having a battle. We are still in that battle up to now, because she has since passed away. She passed away 3 years after my dad passed away. But she also has a son who's not my dad's. He came to the family with his mom when he was 18 years old. But right now he's actually fighting us for that same estate, which does not belong to him. So the matters are, and they've been, and they're still in court.
We cannot really talk about because it's still in court.
Yeah.
But as we wind up with this conversation on this particular book, what kind of reader would you recommend this book to?
I would recommend this book not to young children, because some of this content in here probably would scare them. But anybody from the age of 17 upwards, they can read this book. Parents who don't know what to do with some of these situations, I recommend that they read this. And children who are going through tough times, and people who are going through tough times, I would recommend they read this book, because my encouragement to people is that trauma is there, and please don't just be quiet. It's good to talk to someone. Right now there's an opportunity that people can talk even to counselors and all. So in our case, we didn't have anybody to talk to about our situation, but we have counselors now and psychologists that these children can speak to if they're going through a tough time.
Yeah. Aside from forgiveness as the main lesson that someone would get from this particular book, what other lesson maybe as we finish? As
tough as life may be, we just have to encourage ourselves and encourage each other when somebody is going through a tough time. The other thing I would also recommend is, prayers. Prayers are a very important part of, like I've talked a lot about verses in the Bible where people can turn to God, especially when they're going through tough times. And as much as we go to the psychologists and all that, it's really important that, we put everything to God and ask God to guide us in our lives and to help us.
Okay, for someone who would love to get themselves a copy, where do they get the book?
They can go to Amazon or go to my website, crythebelovedchildren.com, to get a copy. On the 4th, which is the Wednesday, on Wednesday we are going to have a book launch. And it will be at KICC in Parlor Room. I would encourage people to come if they would like to. We'll have a few hard copies that we are going to be selling, but they can still get copies from the website from Amazon.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming to the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, this is where we end this particular discussion, but don't go too far. After the break, Mike Megwe will be right here talking about an issue that is of importance, and that is the El Nino rains.